My daughter-in-law offered me a deal, move into a mansion while she takes my small house. When I agreed, I found out I had no rights to the mansion, and she had already sold my house. But what happened next shocked everyone. At 71, I thought I had learned to read people. Wrinkles, you see, don't just sit on your face. They are carved there by years of seeing through lies, of standing strong through storms, of knowing when a smile hides a dagger. But somehow, when it came to my daughter-in-law Viola, my instincts betrayed me. My little cottage had been my pride for decades. It wasn't grand, but it was mine. The wooden beams still carried the scent of the forest from which they'd been cut. The floor creaked under my slippers in a rhythm I had memorized over the years. My late husband and I had planted lilacs at the front gate, and every spring their purple blossoms would spill over the fence as if reminding the world that joy still existed. I thought I'd die in that cottage. That was the plan. But Viola had other ideas. One Sunday afternoon, after we'd finished lunch at the long table in my kitchen, Viola leaned closer, her perfectly manicured hand resting on mine. She had a way of speaking that made every sentence feel rehearsed, like she had been practicing it in front of a mirror. "Mother Batty," she said, her voice dripping with honey, "you've worked so hard your whole life. Don't you think it's time you enjoy some comfort?" I raised an eyebrow. "I have comfort," I said, gesturing to my steaming teapot and the cozy room around us. She gave a soft laugh, tilting her head like I was a naive child. "Oh, but this cottage is so small, so outdated. You deserve something better, a bigger home with wide hallways and a real garden. A place where the grandchildren can run and play. Don't you want to see them happy when they visit?" That pierced me. She knew my weakness, my grandchildren. Every smile of theirs was worth gold to me. Before I could answer, my son chimed in, though his eyes didn't quite meet mine. "Mom, Viola's right. This old place is charming, but it's hard for you. Stairs, narrow rooms, you'd be much safer and happier in a modern house. And besides, we'd all be together more often." They painted the picture so vividly, I could almost see it. The grandchildren running through wide corridors, my knitting chair in a sunlit room, fresh flowers planted in a bigger garden. It was tempting, I'll admit. "But what about this house?" I asked softly. "Your father built it with his own hands." Viola pressed her hand to her chest, sighing dramatically. "Oh, we'll take care of everything, don't worry. You'll never lose what's yours. Think of this as a trade up. You've given so much to the family. It's time we give something back." Her words wrapped around me like silk, but in hindsight, it was silk hiding steel chains. Still, in that moment, I let my guard down. Trust is a dangerous thing. It grows with the years and makes you blind to the sharpness of betrayal. I nodded slowly. "If you think it's best." Viola's eyes lit up with a victory she tried to mask with another sweet smile. "It is, Mother Batty. You'll see. You'll thank us for this." That night, as I packed a few boxes of my belongings, I paused in front of the old rocking chair by the window. The lilacs outside swayed gently in the spring breeze, their scent floating into the room. For a brief moment, something inside me whispered, "Don't do this. Don't trust her." But I hushed that voice. I wanted to believe. After all, they were my family. And family doesn't betray you. Or so I thought. With trembling fingers, I sealed the last box. The first step toward a mansion that wasn't really mine had already been taken. And I had no idea that I was walking straight into Viola's trap. The morning I moved into the mansion, the sky was the color of polished silver, bright but not warm. A storm was hiding somewhere far away. I could feel it in my bones, though at the time I thought it was just the usual ache of old age. Viola and my son arrived in a large SUV to help me move. The grandchildren waved from the back seat, their little faces pressed to the glass. They were excited, buzzing with energy, asking 1,000 questions about the new big house. Their innocence soothed my worries. Children don't know the ways of betrayal yet. They only see what's promised to them. The mansion stood on the outskirts of town, A wide two-story building with pale stone walls and an iron gate that swung open with a groan. The driveway curved like a river, leading up to a door taller than any I'd ever seen. It looked like something out of a magazine, grand, polished, flawless. Viola spread her arms dramatically as the car rolled to a stop. "Welcome home, Mother Batty," she announced, her voice theatrical. I stepped out of the car slowly, my shoes crunching against the gravel. I looked at the house and tried to feel joy. It was indeed beautiful, but beauty doesn't always mean warmth. Already I missed the creak of my cottage floors, the way sunlight filtered through the lace curtains my husband and I had chosen together. Inside, the mansion was so spacious it felt hollow. Every sound echoed, the slam of a door, the laughter of the grandchildren, even my own footsteps. Viola walked me through the rooms as though she were giving a tour to a guest. "Here's the sitting room. Look at those windows. And here, the dining hall. We could host 30 people. And this will be your room, Mother Batty, right here on the ground floor. No stairs, everything convenient." The room she indicated was large, sterile, and cold. A bed had been made up with white sheets, crisp as though no one had ever touched them. I smiled politely, but in my heart, I felt like I was stepping into a hotel, not a home. Still, I tried. I unpacked my boxes. I placed my knitting basket near the armchair by the window. I set my husband's photo on the bedside table. The grandchildren ran through the halls, their laughter bouncing from wall to wall, and for a moment I thought maybe I had been wrong to doubt. Maybe this would work. The first few weeks passed in a strange calm. Viola visited often, always with her bright, calculated smiles. My son seemed distracted, busy with work, rarely sitting down to talk with me. The children were the only genuine joy. They would curl up in my lap in the evenings, telling me about school, their hair smelling of shampoo and sunshine. But something gnawed at me. Papers. I never saw any papers. No contracts, no deeds, nothing with my name on it. Whenever I asked, Viola brushed it off with a laugh. "Oh, Mother Batty, don't worry about those boring documents. We've handled everything. You just relax and enjoy yourself." Her words slid over me like oil. And still, I forced myself to trust. After all, what mother wants to believe her son and his wife are weaving lies under her roof? Then came the letter. It arrived one gray morning, sealed in an official envelope with heavy ink on the front. I sat at the kitchen island, the grandchildren gone to school, the house unusually quiet. My hands trembled as I tore it open. It was from the county clerk's office, a property notice. The mansion, it stated in black and white, was registered solely under Viola's name. Not mine, not even my son's. Hers alone. My heart slammed against my ribs. I read it once, twice, 3 times. The letters blurred, but the meaning was clear. I was not the mistress of this house. I was not even a co-owner. I was a guest, a tolerated guest. And in an instant, I understood. The trade had never been real. Viola had played me. My cottage, the home my husband built, the soil in which my life was planted, was gone. And this mansion, this cold palace I had been told was mine, belonged to her all alone. I sat frozen for what felt like hours, staring at the letter while the refrigerator hummed behind me. When the sound of a car door slamming outside jolted me awake, I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my apron pocket. My lips pressed into a thin line. Trust, I realized, was the most expensive thing I had ever given. And now, it had cost me everything. I didn't know it yet, but that letter was the beginning of my eviction. It was a month after I received the letter when the axe finally fell. The morning began like any other, tea steeping in my favorite porcelain cup, the sun pushing pale light through the tall windows of the mansion's kitchen.
I was trying to paint in my small sketchbook, something to calm my mind, though my hand trembled too much to keep the brush steady. Then I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel drive. Viola's car. I knew her footsteps by now, sharp, confident clicks against the marble floor. She entered without knocking, her perfume arriving before she did, sickly sweet and suffocating. "Mother Batty," she sang out, as though she were greeting a stranger. "We need to talk." I wiped my hands on my apron and faced her. Her smile was too wide, her eyes glittering. That smile always meant trouble. She laid a stack of documents on the counter with a loud slap. "As you know, this mansion is registered under my name. You've been living here without proper standing. So, unfortunately, it's time to put things in order." I stared at her, the words catching in my throat. "What do you mean by put things in order, Viola?" She tilted her head like a cat watching a bird flutter helplessly. "I mean, Mother Batty, that you'll have to leave. I've been generous letting you stay here, but the house isn't yours, and frankly, I need the space." The room spun. My teacup slipped from my fingers and shattered on the tile, sending brown liquid in every direction. "My cottage," I whispered. "You promised this was a trade. That house was my life." Viola smirked. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. The cottage has already been sold. A lovely young couple bought it last week. They're probably renovating it as we speak. You should be happy, really. You helped make someone's dream come true." Her words cut deeper than knives. My knees nearly gave out beneath me. 30 years of memories, my husband's laughter, our family dinners, the roses I planted by the porch, all sold like some unwanted trinket at a yard sale. "I trusted you," I rasped, my voice breaking. "I trusted my own son." For the first time, something flickered across Viola's face. Not guilt, but annoyance. "Your son had nothing to do with this. This was my arrangement. He just went along with it. He doesn't like to get involved in these messy details. That's what family is for, right? We each have our roles." My role, apparently, was the fool. She pulled a set of gleaming keys from her purse and dangled them like a trophy. "The locks are being changed tomorrow morning. Consider this your official notice. I suggest you start packing, Mother Batty." My chest burned with shame, fury, and grief all at once. I wanted to scream, to curse, to beg, but no words came, only silence. That night, I sat in the cold emptiness of the room that never felt like mine. The grandchildren were asleep upstairs, unaware of the war their mother had declared. I touched the frame of my husband's photo, whispering to him in the dark. "They've taken everything from me, love. Everything. But I swear to you, I will not stay broken. Not for long." The next morning, when the locksmith arrived, I had only 2 suitcases and a handbag. Viola stood in the doorway, arms folded, watching like a queen surveying her victory. "Goodbye, Mother Batty," she said lightly. "Take care of yourself." The first night after they cast me out, I sat on a bench near the bus station with my 2 suitcases at my feet. It was early spring, but the air was sharp, carrying the damp chill of rain. People hurried past without looking, as though I were invisible. And maybe I was. A 71-year-old woman, hair silvered, clothes too proper for the street, clutching bags like they were my lifeline. I had money, yes, not much, but enough. A little nest egg my husband and I had saved. But at that moment, wealth didn't matter. What mattered was the humiliation. I had been traded out of my own life like a pawn, pushed aside by the very people who should have cherished me. For 2 nights, I stayed at a cheap roadside motel. The wallpaper was peeling, the mattress sagged, and every sound from the next room came through the paper-thin walls. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind running in circles. I saw my cottage, every corner, every memory,
sold to strangers. I saw Viola's triumphant smirk as she changed the locks. I saw my son, silent, cowardly, letting his wife poison everything between us. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to let my fury devour me. But instead, I did what I always had. I thought. I planned. On the third morning, I walked to the bank. I withdrew a significant portion of my savings and sat down with a local real estate agent. She looked me up and down skeptically at first, but when I spread the crisp bills across her desk, her tone changed. "I need something small," I told her. "Solid walls, a roof that won't leak, a place that's mine." She found me a modest cottage on the edge of town. It wasn't much, a peeling porch, paint faded from years of neglect, but the bones were good. And most importantly, the deed would bear only one name, mine. The first night there, I sat alone in the empty living room, the silence pressing in from all sides. I lit a single candle, set my husband's photo on the mantel, and whispered, "We're starting over, love. They won't win. Not in the end." Still, the humiliation lingered. At the grocery store, I overheard whispers. "Did you hear? Viola got that mansion for herself. They say Batty just handed over her house. She must be losing her mind." Each word was a dagger. I wanted to shout the truth, to tell them how I had been tricked, but pride kept my mouth shut. Better silence than sounding like a bitter old woman no one believed. Days turned to weeks. I cleaned the cottage, scrubbed the floors, painted the walls with my own hands. Each brushstroke was a small reclaiming of myself. But beneath it all, a fire smoldered. I wasn't just rebuilding a house. I was preparing for the day Viola's smug little empire would crack. Because life had taught me one thing: when people build on lies, the walls always collapse. It happened on a humid night in July. The air was thick with the scent of grass and smoke from distant barbecues, the kind of evening when families gathered in backyards, when laughter drifted through open windows. I was sitting on my porch with a cup of tea, watching the last glow of sunset fade, when I heard of the first wail of sirens. At first, I paid no attention. Fires happened, accidents happened. But the sound didn't fade. It grew louder, closer, until the red and blue lights flashed against the trees near my lane. Curiosity pulled me to the street, where a small crowd was forming. People pointed, whispered. Then I saw it. The mansion, Viola's proud jewel, the monument to her vanity. It was ablaze. Flames licked at the windows, rising higher with each gust of wind. The roof glowed, sparks showering into the night sky. The grand facade that had once mocked me with its fresh paint and expensive stone now looked like a torch, devoured by its own splendor. Neighbors stood in shock. Some muttered prayers, others shook their heads in disbelief. I stayed silent, my heart thudding in my chest, a strange mixture of emotions swirling inside me. There was no joy, not exactly. The sight of destruction, of chaos, never truly brings joy. But there was a dark, undeniable sense of justice. The mansion that had been taken from me, not in bricks, but in betrayal and deceit, was now nothing but ash and ruin. I caught sight of Viola on the sidewalk, barefoot, hair wild, clutching my son's arm. Her face, once so carefully painted with disdain and pride, was pale and streaked with tears. She shouted orders at the firefighters, as if they would obey her, as if the flames would listen. My son stood beside her, useless, his shoulders slumped, his eyes darting nervously at the growing crowd. The fire raged for hours, unstoppable. By the time dawn broke, the house was nothing but a skeleton of charred beams, smoke rising into the pale morning sky. A week later, I heard the knock at my door. When I opened it, there they stood, Viola and my son, like beggars. She tried to mask her desperation with a trembling smile. My son couldn't even look at me. Viola spoke first,
her voice soft and sweet in a way it had never been before. "Batty, you know us. You know the children. We have nowhere to go. Just for a while, until we get back on our feet. You have space here." For a moment, I said nothing. I looked at them standing there, ash still clinging to their clothes, pride burned away along with their mansion. The sight was almost biblical, like watching a fallen queen stripped of her crown. Finally, I stepped aside just enough to make them think I might let them in. Their shoulders relaxed, hope flickering in their eyes. And then, slowly, I shook my head. "No," I said firmly. "This house is mine. My peace is mine. You traded away my trust for bricks and lies. You took everything from me and thought I would be too old, too weak to fight back. Now you've lost your grand palace, and you want to invade my little corner of peace? I will not let you." Viola's eyes widened, shock breaking across her face. My son's lips parted, as if he wanted to speak, but no words came. I didn't slam the door. I closed it slowly, deliberately, leaving them standing in the summer heat with their shame. Inside, my hands trembled, but my heart was steady. For the first time in years, I felt the power balance shift. I wasn't the victim anymore. The house I'd bought for myself, humble as it was, had become more than shelter. It was my fortress, and unlike theirs, mine stood on truth, not deceit.
Word travels quickly in a small town. By the time the ashes of the mansion cooled, the whole community knew what had happened. Some called it a tragedy, others whispered it was justice. But one thing became clear. The story of Viola's betrayal, of how she tricked me out of my home and left me with nothing, spread wider than I had ever imagined. Neighbors who once nodded politely now stopped to talk, voices low but worn. "We heard what they did to you, Batty. Shameful. You didn't deserve that." I had lived many years in this town, and for the first time I felt truly seen. Before, I was just another elderly woman walking to the market with a basket of bread or tending my roses in silence. But now people looked at me differently, not with pity, but with respect. They saw that I had not crumbled, I had not begged, I had stood my ground. Meanwhile, Viola and my son drifted like shadows. They rented a cramped apartment on the edge of town, far from the people they once impressed with their mansion and parties. Their children were withdrawn at school. The sparkle that Viola loved to display in photographs had dulled. I would see her sometimes in the supermarket, her cart filled with cheaper brands, her makeup applied hastily, the arrogance stripped from her face. She avoided my eyes. My son, if we crossed paths, would give me a fleeting glance, half guilt, half resentment, then turn away. I did not chase them. I did not gloat. Life itself was delivering their punishment more deeply than I ever could. My revenge had not been flames or fire. It was simply saying no when they asked for my roof. That boundary had burned them more thoroughly than the blaze that swallowed their mansion. At home, in my small but warm house, I built a new rhythm. I planted flowers in the yard, their colors filling the mornings with quiet joy. I joined a local knitting circle and even led them sometimes, my fingers still nimble, my laughter returning in slow ripples. On Sundays, I hosted 2 of my oldest friends for tea. We sat in my kitchen, sunlight spilling across the table, and for the first time in years, I felt no burden of deception hanging over me. There were evenings when the memories of betrayal still pricked at me. Viola's honeyed words, my son's silence, the cruel discovery of the eviction letter. Those wounds didn't disappear overnight, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they reminded me of the strength I had uncovered in myself, strength I had almost forgotten I possessed. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the cicadas hummed in the distance, I stood on my porch and looked out at my quiet street. For so long, I had thought peace was something my family should provide, love from a son, care from a daughter-in-law.
I realized now that peace was something I could give myself. It was not about their approval, their apologies, or their acceptance. It was about building a life where betrayal could not reach me again. I smiled softly to myself, my tea warm in my hand. The fire had consumed their world, but it had also cleared the smoke from mine.
Months rolled into a year, and the seasons marked the passing of time in my little house. Winter snow lay soft on the roof, spring flowers pushed through the soil, summer heat warmed the porch, and autumn painted the trees with fire. Each cycle stitched itself into the fabric of my new life, one made entirely by my own choices. I had never considered myself a woman of legacy. I was a mother, a wife once, a homemaker, then simply an aging woman with gray hair and wrinkled hands. But now I thought differently. My life, my decisions, my boundaries, they mattered. They told a story, not just to me, but to others. I began writing. Not a book, not something grand, but small letters, journal entries, reflections. I wrote about how trust can be both a gift and a weapon, how silence can destroy families more than arguments ever could, how age does not strip us of dignity unless we surrender it ourselves. My words were not polished, but they were real, and I tucked them into a small wooden box, the kind I once used to keep photographs. I also took practical steps. I went to the lawyer's office and made sure everything I owned, this house, my savings, even the furniture I loved, was locked tightly under my name, with instructions as clear as glass. No trick, no forged signature, no honeyed scheme would strip me of security again. And when I thought about who might inherit after me, I made a quiet, firm decision. It would not be my son, nor Viola. They had chosen their path, and I had chosen mine. Instead, I named my grandchildren directly, bypassing their parents. Whatever small legacy I had would go to them, a chance to start fresh when they were old enough to understand. The town began to invite me to gatherings. At the community center, people asked me to speak to the elderly about resilience, about not giving away too much trust. I never raised my voice. I never boasted. I simply shared my story, and in the eyes of many women there, I saw recognition. They too had been tricked, overlooked, or humiliated. My words gave them a little armor. As for Viola and my son, they faded further into the distance. They never recovered the grandeur they once craved. Now and then, whispers reached me. Viola trying to start new ventures, failing. My son hopping between jobs, never finding solid ground. Sometimes guilt gnawed at me, reminding me he was my child, the boy I once held in my arms. But then I remembered the eviction letter, his silence when his wife pushed me out, the look on his face when I refused to house them after the fire. That silence had been his choice. Mine was peace. One evening, I sat by the window as twilight settled, holding a photograph of myself in younger days, standing proudly in front of the old house Viola had stolen from me. My eyes in that photo were bright, trusting, softer than they were now. And yet, I did not envy that younger self. Because now, after betrayal and loss, I had something she didn't, a hard-earned strength that no one could ever take away. I placed the photo back in the box with my letters, closed the lid, and smiled. My life was smaller now, simpler, but it was truly mine. And that, I realized, was my revenge. Not fire, not anger, not even money. Just the quiet power of surviving betrayal and living better than those who wronged me. The world outside dimmed into night, but in my heart there was only light.